And today's topic is biaxially loaded columns. So slides have been prepared from the reference book, Concrete Structures by Z.A. Siddiqui. If you want to question during lecture, then you can raise your hand and then I can respond to your questions. So biaxially loaded column, up till now we discussed columns under uniaxial bending. First we started with axially loaded column and then we discussed in detail columns under uniaxial bending. From today onward, I want to discuss biaxially loaded short columns. So biaxial bending, in practice, many columns are subjected to bending about both principal axes simultaneously. A typical example is the corner column of a building. So when I discussed uniaxial bending, I have given you a typical example, edge column. Now when we want to give a typical example of a column subjected to biaxial bending, then the good example is corner column. A failure surface for axial load plus biaxial bending is plotted on the three mutually perpendicular axes exactly analogous to failure line for the axial load plus uniaxial bending. So in this paragraph, actually, we want to explain that unlike column under uniaxial bending, where we have seen the interaction between load and movement, and we have drawn the capacity curve between load and movement, and it was represented as the capacity line or the ultimate, uh, considering ultimate stand design, the ultimate load versus load versus ultimate movement line. Unlike that column under uniaxial bending, now since we are talking about a column which is subjected simultaneously to bending about both axes, so it means we now want to discuss load as well as movement acting about two axes. So if we want to now locate a point which is representing P and Mx and My, so then we need to work on a surface. So three mutually perpendicular axes, Px, one x as load axis, other two axes are movement axis, and where we get intersection of points, that will represent a point on the surface. So in the first quadrant, I may say that it is the compressive force as well as movement about both axes. So first quadrant of the, you can say, load versus movement about x and y axis, we can visualize by looking at this picture, which is shown as third part, as the third picture, in which p axis and the mnx and mny and any point on this surface, and this surface is drawn in the first quadrant. First quadrant means that we are plotting movement about x-axis. Suppose if it is the clockwise movement is considered as positive for mnx, for mny, and p as the axial compressive force, then any point p, mx, my, if we can calculate, that will be one point on the surface, and this is one quadrant of that surface, and all the points drawn on the first quadrant on that surface will represent actually the capacity of that column. So if I have P and Mx and My determined for a column and I plot all of them for a column with known reinforcement ratio, with known Fc prime and Fy, I can get lot of points if I solve each particular combination of P and Mx and My, and then once I join all the points, it will create a surface. So if I consider that there is no biaxial movement, only Mx or My is present, then I will switch back to this failure line, which is only between either P and Mx or P and My. But if both will be present, then I may be like the longitude, you can say one sort of a curve which is present at any distance lambda from mnx, from movement axis, and I will have different slices. I may take interval of 1 degree of lambda, and for each 1 degree of lambda I will have one slice on that surface, and that particular lambda will be representing one combination of P, Mx and My. So I will discuss in detail what is lambda and what is the significance of this angle, but just to uh, briefly explain that now we are not looking on a failure line, we are actually looking on a surface. So just like this picture is drawn in first quadrant, you can see if M and X I take as the opposite to this axis at 180 degree. I go to, for example, the second quadrant. It may be counterclockwise M and X and clockwise M and Y. Then I will get the same surface in the second quadrant. So in this, similarly, if I take opposite to that M and Y, so it means clockwise M and Y and counterclockwise M and X, I will get the same surface in the third quadrant. And so is a complete surface in four quadrants by different combinations of clockwise or counterclockwise movements present on the cross section along with the axial force. I will get a complete 3D surface. And moreover, if this Pn rather than compression, if it goes, the column goes in tension, I can even generate a surface which will be in the tension domain, and the same will be generated below that zero of the origin. It means I am looking now at the tensile force as well as the moment present on the column. So such surfaces we can generate with the application of uh, computer aided design. So it is easier to draw such surface manually. How to get points on that surface is little tedious, which I will explain through one example. Coming back, a failure surface for axial load plus biaxial bending is plotted on three mutually perpendicular axes, exactly analogous to failure line for axial load plus uniaxial bending. Any combination of Pu, Mux, Muy falling inside the design surface can be applied safely, but any point falling outside the surface would represent failure. So the idea is same, the concept is same, that all the points which will fall, combination of P, Mx and My, which will fall inside the surface or on the surface, will represent safe capacity. Like in uniaxial bending we have seen. For example, if I quote you example that this picture is drawn for a column in which steel is uniformly placed on four edges, and this picture represents the reinforcement ratio of a column 1%. So this one surface will actually represent 1% reinforcement ratio surface. So if you get P, Mx, My, and rather than nominal you are working on the ultimate design surface, then similar to uniaxial column you have to select different phi values, phi 0.65 in compression domain, and then in transition from 0.65 to 0.9, and then in the lower tension control 0.9. So the nominal will envelop the design surface, and furthermore in that design surface is actually the ultimate strength design uh, objective surface, and any point within that surface will represent safe capacity. So if, for example, this surface is of 1% steel, so and if you go beyond that, it means you need to generate another surface of 2%, then 3%, then up to 6% you can generate surfaces. Even Ford allows us up to 8%, we may have 8% reinforcement ratio surface. So any point which will fall within the surface, and we need to then examine that this point is falling between 1 and 2% surface or above 2%. So similar to our uniaxial column, we can generate such surfaces for various reinforcement ratios. But obviously more numerical effort is required to generate this surface, unlike the column under uniaxial bending case. So since we are working on two mutually perpendicular axes, so we are working on two moments, so there are two eccentricities present. We will be using E with subscript X abbreviation for eccentricity along X-axis. So from the plastic centroid, it is the load point of application, and the distance of point of application of load from the plastic centroid along X-axis will represent Ex, and similarly Ey will represent the distance of point of application of axial load from the plastic centroid along Y-axis. Now in literature, you may find three different type of interaction surfaces. So, and different surfaces normally are called for different empirical methods to design the column. We will be discussing how to design column under biaxial bending. So there are some exact there is one exact method, compatibility of strain method, which is little lengthy. Other methods are simplified methods. Like we have studied a simplified method for it was actually not as such simplified. In uniaxial bending, we studied direct design method. I have not explained you simplified method to design the column under uniaxial bending, but in literature you will get even simplified methods to design the column under uniaxial bending. That topic I have not included in contents, but in biaxial columns under biaxial bending, we want to discuss simplified methods of design, because the exact method of design will be little lengthy and tedious. I will explain it briefly, but in literature you will find that for biaxial bending there are simplified methods, and uh, we follow them once we want to design the column manually. And to apply those simplified methods, different types of surfaces may become important. For example, the surface plotted for load and eccentricities rather than load and movement, which is a third surface, which we can conceive very easily. Normally, if surface is plotted between load and movements, we get its understanding like it is the extension of the load and movement curve for uniaxial bending. So the third surface, which is very commonly used, is quite familiar to us, but only extension is now there are two movements present. But the first surface, which is the surface between load and eccentricities, it may become useful in one of the empirical methods if we have such surface. There is another surface that reciprocal of the axial force. You will calculate the reciprocal of the axial load, and then you will plot it against the eccentricities. So all three of them are shown in this slide. So interaction diagram A, when you are, and they are all are shown in first quadrant. So you may say that Ex positive and negative. If you say that along x-axis, positive x-axis, it is Ex positive. Along negative direction of x-axis, it will become Ex negative. So is Ey. You can have then surface in first, second, third, fourth quadrant once you plot between load and eccentricities. The second surface is reciprocal of that. It is just opposite. You can say just one change is made, that rather than axial force, you take reciprocal of it. It will become important when we will discuss one simplified method of design. And the third is very familiar to us, which is load and between two movements. And uh, it is shown on this third surface, case 1, case 2, and case 3. So what are these cases? These cases are explained on this slide number 6. So first I will discuss these three cases and then I will read the remaining slides, which are 4, 5. Now the case 1, you are well familiar with this case, that eccentricity along x-axis. So we have solved this column in depth. We understand how to generate the interaction curve, failure line, capacity line, and then ultimate strength design line. If I change the eccentricity along y-axis, again I understand that still it is a column under uniaxial bending, either about y-axis or about x-axis movements are present. So in case 1, I will say it is m and y because about y-axis movement is present. If I reverse Ex against the positive x-axis direction, it will again become m and y, but the direction of movement will change. And so is uh, the magnitude remains the same, only the direction of the movement will change if Ex is equal to minus Ex. Similarly, Ey in this present direction, it is along the positive x-axis direction. I can even uh, put that eccentricity along y-axis opposite to that positive y-axis, but in both cases, I will get uniaxial bending on the column. It is important to note that in both cases, your neutral axis uh, in these two pictures, hashed area represents the compression block, and below that hashed area is the tension domain. But in both pictures, you will find that the compression block and the neutral axis remains parallel to the edge. So just one unknown is that what is the depth of neutral axis, which is C in this picture and C in case 2. So in all our topics, what we have discussed in PRC1 and up till now in PRC2, we discussed depth of neutral axis in beams, even in slabs, in cross section, in footings. We are not concerned that this neutral axis may become inclined and it is not parallel to one of the edge. This problem will emerge when I will discuss case 3, which is the column subjected simultaneously to eccentricities along x and along y axis. Now this load Pn is present at a point which has both eccentricities. It is neither present along x-axis only nor along y-axis. It is slightly off the axis. So now it has both Ex and Ey. In this picture now, lambda is also marked. And this lambda, mathematically I can say if I take Ex divided by Ey and I take tan of that. So tangent lambda is actually Ex over Ey. I can easily calculate tangent of lambda, and inverse of that tan will give me lambda. So tangent inverse Ex over Ey. I can get the lambda if I know eccentricities. But more important is if you examine that if this will be the situation that load is little off the axis line, it is having both eccentricities. So once I want to now investigate where is neutral axis. One important thing is it is not always true that your neutral axis will be perpendicular to your load. Like in this picture, qualitatively it has been drawn, and hashed area represents the concrete in compression and the white area represents the tension concrete, which we know that its contribution is negligible in our movement resistance, and we ignore it. But it is important to note that the neutral axis orientation, which we will define as the clockwise angle of the neutral axis with reference to the vertical axis, which is y-axis. So although it is shown theta over here, but the same theta will exist when I take this clockwise angle from the neutral axis drawn with solid line to the vertical axis. So this theta will decide the orientation of the neutral axis. So if I consider theta as in this actually picture, if I consider theta as 90 degree, suppose I am saying theta is 90 degree, what will happen? When theta will get 90 degree, it means lambda will get 0 degree. And theta 90 means that we are actually looking on the case 2 and m and x is present. So I'm just now discussing orientation of the neutral axis. When theta will get 90 degree, it means Pn has moved along y-axis and lambda will get 0. So is when this theta will get 0 degree, it means lambda will get 90 degree, because theta 0 means that now you are with your neutral axis along y-axis. But importantly, you never say that your dotted P line from origin of the column or from plastic centroid of the column up to Pn, which is located, will be normal to your neutral axis. So neutral axis primarily will not always be normal to your load line. Unlike case 1 and case 2, where we said neutral axis is parallel to the edge and incidentally it was perpendicular to your load line. Here this will not be the case. Moreover, second challenge is we can estimate lambda because Ex and Ey will be given. We can estimate lambda, no problem at all. But the relationship of theta and lambda is not well established, that if this is the lambda, this will be the theta. I need to iterate. I need to iterate that what will be the angle of neutral axis. It is shown as 0.2 on this slide with blue color. Angle of neutral axis is varied. What I have to do is I need to struggle. I need to check for various thetas and as well as for various depth of the neutral axis from the highly stressed corner of the column, that how much is the depth of the neutral axis. Now C is not as it was so simple in case 1 and case 2 that it was the distance from the highly compressed edge. Now it will become highly compressed corner, and then the neutral axis depth will be actually the distance from the highly compressed corner to the point where then the compression domain will finish and tension will start. So it means you need to vary not only the depth of the neutral axis, and which will not be parallel to the edge, but as well as you need to iterate the theta, the angle of the neutral axis. And it is your luck that what you select as the C and the theta will give you the answer exactly equal to the Pn and Mnx and Mny. I repeat that if you are given with a particular load and movement x and movement y, and you are asked that against this P and mnx and mny. Suppose P is 1000 kilonewton, mx is 100 kilonewton, my is also 100 kilonewton meter. And you are asked to give against this applied load and two movements, what is the neutral axis depth and what is the theta, orientation of neutral axis. To get answer of this question, you need to struggle a lot, because there is no one, you can say, theta which you can decide right in beginning, which will definitely give you the answer of these intersection of these 3 points. You need to start assuming, first of all, that what will be the depth of the neutral axis, and as well as what theta I should select, which finally gives me the answer close to the question P and mx and my. And once you solve it, remember you are getting 1 point on the surface. 1 point on a surface which you can generate by calculating thousands of points. So then that surface will become more accurate. And to get 1 point on the surface, you need to work a lot. Because how you need to work a lot, you can check even in this picture that how you will calculate the triangle area and its CC, and then its point of application of CC on this triangular area. And furthermore, this single bar is in compression, this corner bar. And this bar will be in tension and it is very close to neutral axis. And the third bar again is little deeper, it will be in tension. And fourth bar is more deeper, it will also be in tension. It means each bar in this column will have a different lever arm, a different strain magnitude, and a different stress value. And you are looking at this picture with only 4 bars. Imagine that if this column has multiple layers, because we are talking about a column under biaxial bending, finally we will end up with more bars and uniformly placed steel on 4 edges. So we are actually handling multiple bars, and each bar will have a corresponding lever arm, a corresponding strain value, and then finally we need to write the load equations and movement equations, and we need to get solution of that point. So keeping in view this brief description, I have what is lambda. I earlier explained lambda is the eccentricity angle defined as the angular distance of the load from y-axis. So let me again show you that picture. Angular distance of the load from y-axis. This is lambda. It is because it is Ex over Ey, tangent of. So it is angular distance of the load from y-axis. So if I replace Ex and Ey, I can replace them with M and Y over M and X. What is theta? Counterclockwise angle of the neutral axis with respect to y-axis. So if you you can say, sorry, over here it is, they are saying counterclockwise, so it means from this y-axis, this you can say neutral axis. So if I say this counterclockwise angle at the moment is suppose 30 degree, when it will get 90 degree, lambda will get 0 degree. But you can't say that if this is 30 degree, this will be 70 degree, and my neutral axis will be normal to PN line. It will not be the case. It may be close, but not always perpendicular to the dotted line. So this is one, theta and lambda, important for our problem. Analysis and design of column sections having biaxial bending are lengthy compared to uniaxial bending cases, because a trial and adjustment procedure is required to find the inclination of neutral axis theta and the depth of neutral axis C, satisfying the equilibrium equations. There are two unknowns in this analysis, namely theta and neutral axis depth, as compared to only one unknown in uniaxial cases, which was only neutral axis depth. Here we have two targets, not only the neutral axis depth, but also its inclination. Once we assume them, I will calculate accordingly and I will get P, Mx and My. If those P, Mx and My are close to my given question P, Mx and My, I will say I am successful in locating that point. But if I do all the calculation and I am not close to the question Px and My, Mx and My, then I have to repeat the calculation with a different C and theta. In some cases, you will fix the C and you will vary the theta, while in other cases, you may fix the theta and vary the C value. So it means both need to be considered until you get to that question P, Mx and My. So even in this case, it is more easier that you select randomly C and theta and keep on doing calculations. For each selected C and theta, you will get P, Mx and My. And that each C and theta and each P, Mx and My is one point on the surface. So, for example, if you are using computer and you are well equipped, you just need to select a C and theta and solve it. After all this exercise, what you get? Just one point on the surface. And if you have sufficient such points, you will generate a surface. So first, try to get answer against each selected theta and C, and that will just give you one point. So in this way, we can handle this column under biaxial bending. Just I have few slides for your information. I will not discuss them in detail because this is not our target at the moment, but just to give you, just to give you realization that how lengthy this task will be. There are few cases which I want to explain under the heading of biaxial bending. Now look at the possibility. For example, in this picture, you will realize that when I assume that the depth of neutral axis is almost perpendicular to the corner and it has some certain depth and it has some certain orientation, which was the counterclockwise angle of the neutral axis with reference to y-axis. So if this is the case 1, I have one message that one corner of the column is in compression and one bar is in compression and adjacent edges are getting the intersection of that neutral axis. So this is one possibility. Look at the other possibility, that neutral axis has some depth. Still, this corner will be highly compressed as compared to this corner. But here the neutral axis has a different orientation, counterclockwise angle from the vertical axis, and opposite edges are being intercepted by the neutral axis. In this scenario, entirely different. This solid dot is showing the resultant CC, compression force. Now in this, altogether different, that eccentricity is more towards the x-axis, and now still opposite edges are intercepting the neutral axis, but look at the orientation of the neutral axis, which was the counterclockwise angle from the vertical axis. So it seems to be like 10 degree, it seems to be like 80 degree, it seems to be like 45 degrees. So there are three possible scenarios, and fourth one, look at the fourth one, that this column is under more compression, and just one bar. If there are four corner bars, only one bar will go in tension, and still adjacent edges are intercepting the neutral axis, and the depth of neutral axis you may select more deeper to that, and its orientation counterclockwise angle. So these four cases, if you have the energy and the wisdom, you can solve these four cases, and these four cases actually will give you 4 points only on the surface. And to generate the surface, you may need minimum 1,000 points to get a good convex surface. So this is what the point is. And just to give you one idea, look at that first picture, case one. This was the solid line neutral axis depth, and since we are following Whitney's uniform stress block depth, so beta 1 and kxb and beta 1 kyh is just drawn to give that on this corner uniform stresses are present. So the actual neutral axis depth will be converted into A equal to beta 1 C, and that beta 1 is involved so to get the uniform stress block or uniform compression on this triangle. And furthermore, for this triangle, then you will calculate CC 1 over 2 B into H, on which uniform stresses are present, and then furthermore you will locate the centroid point of application of that CC. Since it is a triangle, it will be at 1 over 3 from the base centroid of the triangle and 1 over 3 from the top edge. And furthermore, now look at this scenario, that if you have a neutral axis which is intercepting two opposite edges, and you are serious in calculating the strains and then corresponding stresses, look at the strain diagram. This corner will be under maximum compressive strain, and this normal to this will be the line, and bar 1 will have this strain ordinate, bar 2 will have this strain ordinate, bar 3 will have this one, and bar 4 will get this. And you will work out on this direction what are the strain ordinates and then corresponding stresses and their corresponding lever arms, and then after calculating bar wise the stress and the point of applications, you will finally get the solution of Pn, Mnx and Mny. So just I have inserted these slides in your presentation just to give you one brief review, that if you just want to get 1 point on the surface P, Mnx, Mny, and if this is the diagram on which you are working on, then these much steps and these much calculations are important. Strain in first layer, then strain in second layer, third layer, fourth layer, and this geometry of the picture will be used to calculate the corresponding strain ordinates, and lot of numerical effort is required actually. So it is given underneath a brief procedure. The procedure to plot the strength interaction curve for a particular value of eccentricity angle lambda is as follows. Neutral axis distance from the most heavily compressed corner is selected. Like I said, that this is highly compressed corner, and you will select a neutral axis depth, that normal to this, what is the C value. First you need to select this. Some value of theta is selected. So not only depth, but also orientation of that counterclockwise angle from the vertical axis. So this will also, you will also select. So one particular C and one particular theta you will select. Then concrete stress resultants and its point of application are determined from equations 1 to 3. which I said that you will calculate CC, equation 1, its point of application x bar, y bar from equation 1 to 3. Then strains are calculated in all steels by employing equation 4. Stresses are determined for the condition of equation 5, that what bars in compression, what bars in tension from strains. Multiplying them with the amounts of elasticity, you will get stresses. And once you have all the stresses and their areas, you will get point of application of forces, internal lever arms, then values of P and MNX and MNY are evaluated. Once you will get MNX and MNY, lambda was actually inverse of tan MNY over MNX. Now at this stage now, you will realize that what you have done the calculation, whether it is close to what you are asked. If your Pn, Mnx, Mny are not equal to what was the question value, then you need to go back to step 1. Again, assume some neutral axis depth and theta and work out the latest Pn, Mnx and Mny. So steps 2 to 7 are repeated until lambda will be equal to your target lambda, which was actually the given Mny over Mnx. This needs a lot of effort, so preferably you should generate a surface and then your given question Pmx and My should be located that whether these points are within the surface or outside the surface. Phi factor is calculated for the maximum tensile strain in the steel bar. So just like your columns under uniaxial bending, phi will be decided by the highly stressed bar in tension. So if it is not yielded, then phi will be 0.65. If it is in the transition, then phi will be 0.65 to 0.9. So a new value of neutral axis depth is selected and steps 2 to 9 are repeated until full curve is plotted. So it is actually stated that if you are very much interested in plotting this particular slice that you are actually targeting, that in your column under biaxial bending, I will get all the points at one unique lambda. It means you are actually trying to find out that against this eccentricity angle, what are the combinations of P, Mx, My, P, Mx, My. Every point on this curve will give you lambda, which is Mny over Mnx tangent inverse. So this will be a very challenging task, that you are actually exploring that at one particular meridian on this surface, and that one particular meridian is actually one unique lambda, and you are actually targeting that I will calculate all the points on this particular lambda. If you are not working on one unique lambda, then it is your choice. Any lambda, any theta will give you 1 point on the surface, and that 1 point on the surface will be for one particular column with one particular Fc prime, with one particular Fy and one reinforcement ratio, 1% or 2 or 3. So this is what the strain compatibility method is, that you will be working on exact estimation, and obviously lot of numerical effort is required, but it is more exact method, which in McGregor book by James K. White and McGregor, you will get one problem in which author has solved the column by this strain compatibility method. So I can show you in coming lecture the solved problem, that how much effort was made to solve that column, and that will be obviously more exact method. But in your subject under PRC2, we want to discuss approximate methods of analysis and design for columns under biaxial bending. So all of them are very important for your design office practice, for your academic uh, session, because if I ask you to go for an exact method, which is strain compatibility method, then obviously you have to spend a lot of time, and finally to design the column may become very lengthy. So the approximate methods, although are simplified and little less accurate, but they can help us in safely designing the column. Out of them, the first method is very much, you can say, straightforward, that how to design a column under biaxial bending. It is simply method of superposition. What method of superposition means? That just calculate for the given PU and MUX and then PU and MUY what individually the steel reinforcement demand is. For example, you are assuming that column will be subjected once to PU and MUX and then secondly to PU and MUY. Suppose if you say when only PU and MUX will attack, column requires 2% steel. When PU and MUI will be present only, column requires 1% steel. It means 2% from movement about one axis and 1% from movement about other axis. You will sum them up and you will then detail your column with 3% steel. So calculate it separately and then add it up to get the design for very much, I would say, conservative, little uneconomical, but very designer friendly. I would say that a little overestimation, but you are independently analyzing both the cases and then adding them up. So it is just extension of your previous knowledge, that you already are well familiar to design the column under uniaxial bending. So you will need to solve the problem twice, and then what the answer is, add them up. So there is nothing new in this method, right? But more, you can say, common method available in literature is this method, which is titled as equivalent uniaxial eccentricity method. Very popular, has some limitations which I will discuss. Easy to apply. What is the flow chart? Biaxial eccentricities Ex and Ey are replaced by an equivalent uniaxial eccentricity E naught x or E naught y, and the column is designed for the uniaxial bending case. So I repeat, it is just one, you can say, extension, that you will first get eccentricities on the column, because for example, if you have done the analysis, you know PU and MX and MY. So simply MX over P and MY over P will give you eccentricities. Take both of them. Now try to convert biaxial eccentricity into one single uniaxial eccentricity according to this method. And then once you have converted the biaxial eccentricity into one single uniaxial eccentricity, then use it. Hello. Oh. So in this case, what you have the eccentricities uh, Ex and Ey, you have converted them into one single eccentricity. Suppose in this paragraph we are converting Ex and Ey into one single eccentricity E naught x. Then this equivalent uniaxial eccentricity will be multiplied with the same given axial force, which is Pn, and you will get a, I would say, hypothetical movement on the column, which will be little exaggerated it will be little higher than the individual movements about x or y axis. So it means now you are actually designing the column for the ultimate load or the given load and the movement which has been calculated by using equivalent uniaxial eccentricity. Now, how to get that E naught x? Although in this slide is shown E naught x, you can also get E naught y. When you will be working on E naught x and in what cases you are required to calculate E naught y, that is discussed underneath. What is E naught x? If, for example, you have the individual eccentricities and Ex is present along the dimension B of the column and Ey is present along the dimension H of the column. Suppose column has the rectangular geometry B and H, B along x-axis, H along y-axis. So take the corresponding ratios, Ex divided by the corresponding horizontal dimension, Ey divided by the corresponding vertical dimension of the column along y-axis. If it is stated Ex over B is greater than or at least equal to Ey over H, if, then this equation will help you to calculate equivalent uniaxial eccentricity of the column. And what this equation is, actual Ex what you have will be placed here as first component, then plus. If you take this B as the numerator on the right hand side, what will be the outcome? It will be Ex will be equal to then Ey over H into B. So this is over here. Ey over H into B. So it is actually the outcome of this equation. Ex is equal to E or Y into H. But along with that, there is one coefficient given here, which is alpha, which actually will be multiplied with this Ey over H into B to get the that component, second component, which will be added up in the actual eccentricity to get equivalent uniaxial eccentricity along x-axis. So what this alpha is, there is a further guidance available that you will take the ratio of the ultimate axial force. I think I should stop here because you might Sia, can you raise your hand? Do you have some commitment at 12? Muhammad Umar, Farooq, yes, please. So should I complete or in next lecture I can finish this equivalent uniaxial eccentricity method? Okay, fine. Right, you have a quiz. Okay, then I will stop the video recording at this point and I will upload it in my folder. So please check